So, if you don't know, my name is Steven. I make video games. And so, for whatever reason, I thought I could just catch a flight to Tokyo and live at Airbnbs for 3 months. For what? To make a game. You know, like the way an artist travels the world, so like they put up their easel and they paint the Grand Canyon, and they paint the Eiffel Tower, and I wanted to do that, except instead of painting things, I would be making video games. And I mean, the frustrating thing was that my first few weeks in Tokyo, I actually didn't even get to start on the new game. You know, I spent all this time putting the finishing touches on Witch Stories. That was the game that I was supposed to finish before I left California. And then when I finished Witch Stories, I started developing the Tokyo game. So at this point, the idea was supposed to be about this bookstore that I really liked in Daikanyama.
You know, I made some models, I experimented with some weird character controllers, I tried writing some dialogue trees and stuff, but you know, it was all a dead end. I never really landed on a concept that I liked. You know, it's fucking hard to make a game about a bookstore. It's hard to make that interesting, you know.
The next idea I started working on already had a name. I was going to call it Akihabara Overclockers. You can see that currently I'm in Tokyo, so the game that I'm making right now is about CPU overclocking in the early 2000s. But yeah, if you were living in Akihabara in the early 2000s and you were a particularly nerdy person who was into like CPU overclocking, Akihabara was a great place to be for that. I've been working on it for 3 weeks now. It's barely taking form. I can't really say there's a proper playable loop right now. It was a lot easier to make something like Witch Stories. Everything about Witch Stories was traditional mechanically. It's a lot to wrap my head around, and I find myself more overwhelmed than I ever was with the Witch game, like at any point, to be honest. I think I will need that additional month to really bring this game together.
But I went to Japan on a tourist visa, you know, which means that you can only be in the country for like 90 days max. And dude, I mean, 3 months goes by fast, man. You know, like Overclockers was not, it just wasn't even close to being finished, so.
Have you ever heard of a visa run? No, what's that?
A lot of the people that I was hanging around were expats. You know, like I was in the Gaijin crew, I was in the Dirty Foreigner crew, and you know, I was starting to hear more people talk about this thing called a visa run. It's basically like you leave the country and come back, so it resets your timer for your visa. So like if you're American or British or European or whatever, you don't want to fly all the way back home to do that though. You know, you just want to go somewhere closer, like Korea or Taiwan or whatever. Just go and party for a weekend in Seoul. And then I would just fly back to Tokyo and get back to work on the game.
Because this game, I'm very interested in it as like an experiment, but I don't know if people are going to want to play this. I don't know if this is going to be a fun game. Dude, I'm not making a fucking fun game. Like, Akihabara Overclockers is not fun. I'm like kind of embarrassed to say that. You know, I went this far on this idea, sort of with like a dream in mind. I had a fantasy of what overclocking was. I couldn't even send this to people to play test because it's so just confusing. I see the potential in it. And I think on a long enough timeline, I could polish it and tweak it and discover, right? Because this is like a discovery process, like that I could make it fun. But bro, like, I don't got time. It's fucking March 16th, brother. Right. I remember hanging around Hongdae, fucking just like stress eating, you know, wandering around, just going on these long walks, listening to music and like not knowing what the hell I should do with myself. And a buddy of mine, Andrew, a game dev I met in Tokyo, he's like a streamer, so I was watching him stream and I was in the chat.
I've been making a game that's so boring and probably been operating on some sunk cost fallacy, and now here I am in Seoul, like, what am I doing with my life? Steven, you know what you're doing. Also, you already know about the sunk cost fallacy. If you really think that, I would just move on. And which one are you talking about, the overclocking one? If you don't think it's working, it's totally fair to just move on to your next idea, prototype something else. I mean, I get that. One game I worked on for a full year, maybe 2 years. I worked on it for 2 years, and I was not good enough. I dropped it after 2 years, and then I worked on another game for a full year and a half, and I realized I am not good enough, and I dropped it. It's okay to move on.
I decided to put the game to rest and call it a failure for now. A modest failure. Yeah, it was fucking hard for sure. Witch Stories took way longer than I wanted to finish. And, you know, then I put all that time and energy into the bookstore game, and that didn't go anywhere.
Overclockers was even more time and energy, and it felt like it was actually clearer, like I wouldn't get all lost making it. And so like throwing in the towel for that made me think like, what the fuck? You know, like, what am I doing here? That was the thing. I was all excited about Akihabara, like old Akihabara. I really did love all that stuff with the old radio center and all that, like the ham radio, like hobbyist electronic stuff. And to be honest, that vintage electronic stuff spoke to me more than the PC stuff. So I really started to think about that. Like, what kind of game could I make where it would still be about this old Akiba? Generally, for years, I had been wanting to make a game where you could build robots, like a modular robot fighting game, all shapes and forms. Some that are like on wheels or walk around on legs and stuff like that. I grew up with like BattleBots thing, but I always kind of thought that BattleBots was a little bit of a letdown. But the promise of it, you know, the kind of culture around it, this illegal underground fighting kind of vibe. I was excited by like the dirty, dingy places, a big crowd of people waving money and placing bets. Well, you had this like remote control car kind of controller. Living in Seoul for that month was a trip. Like, I would wake up, I would start streaming, work for 8 to 12 hours, end stream, go to sleep, and I would just do that over and over and over again. And it was wild. It was fucking wild. Totally. It's totally wild. Okay. I think that's cool, because then it plays that, and then it plays the second part, like here. Helicopter, right trigger. Follow me. Follow me. Yeah, here we go. Let's go. Yep. Alright, I get it. By the end of the stay in Seoul, I had built at least the foundations of the game, right? So what's crazy about that is that, like, in that 1 month alone, I had made more progress, had more fun, and kind of like the more important part here is like saw more promise in the game than I had in any amount of time with the 2 previous prototypes. I was able to come back to Tokyo with something that I could actually hand to people, something that people could actually play. It's something that even if they were just looking at, they could just see it and be excited by what they were seeing. That was, I don't know, I needed that. And it was great and everything, but it was still just prototype graphics. Mechanically, it wasn't complete yet either. You know, it was a good start, but I also still had a lot of work ahead of me.